You know, it's funny how life can feel sometimes. We get so caught up in the day-to-day, right? Like we're just racing from one thing to the next.
Totally. Just heads down, checking off that to-do list.
Exactly. But then every so often you stumble upon something, some piece of writing or idea that just makes you hit the brakes and think, whoa,
Yeah.
there's so much more to this whole existence thing than I realized.
Makes you want to hit the pause button on the daily grind.
For real.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened to me when I started digging into the work of Albert Pike.
Ah, a fascinating figure. For our listeners who might not be familiar, 19th century thinker really went deep into human nature, especially within the tradition of Freemasonry.
And he did not hold back. We're diving into his book, Morals and Dogma of Freemasonry, for this deep dive. And let me tell you, I'm already hooked.
I can imagine. Pike uses his Masonic background as the springboard to tackle these universal questions, the kind of stuff we all ponder at some point, our purpose, what it all means, the whole shebang.
Right. And he doesn't shy away from the big stuff. Like right off the bat, he talked about this feeling, this deep down yearning we have for something bigger than ourselves, even when we're totally absorbed in our everyday lives.
He calls it a cry of the human soul.
Wow.
And Pike suggests this yearning, this search for meaning, it often gets stronger, more intense when we're going through tough times.
That makes sense, right? It's like when you face those really challenging experiences, loss, heartbreak, setbacks, you name it, it kind of forces you to look inward. Suddenly, those big existential questions aren't just some abstract philosophy anymore.
They become unavoidable. And Pike, steeped in that Masonic tradition of symbolism and allegory, he suggests that hardship isn't merely suffering.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Go on.
It's more like hardship is the chisel that reveals the true sculpture within. It's how our potential for meaning and connection to something greater, how that potential is revealed.
I love that.
Okay.
So it's like those trials and tribulations, they're not just random bad luck. They're opportunities for growth, to tap into something deeper.
Exactly. And he uses this really vivid image to get this point across, talking about a peasant who unknowingly falls asleep at the base of this magnificent cathedral.
Okay, where's he going with this? I'm picturing it.
So while this peasant's snoozing away, totally oblivious to the architectural wonder all around them, the grandeur of that space, it's still washing over them. It's Pike's way of showing that even when we're not consciously aware of it, even when we feel lost in the weeds of daily life, we're still surrounded by something greater than ourselves. We're connected to something bigger, whether we realize it or not.
Wow, that really puts things in perspective. So we're all capable of experiencing this connection to something larger than ourselves, even if it's not always obvious.
Precisely. It's always there, beneath the surface.
That's a powerful thought. But here's what I find really fascinating. Pike doesn't just leave us with this yearning, this longing for something more. He actually suggests that we each possess this incredible untapped potential within us.
Ah, yes. This is where things get really interesting.
Right. He's talking about these reserves of strength, of goodness, of resilience that we might not even be aware of until we're really challenged.
Exactly. It's like they're hidden depths just waiting to be discovered. And he uses a pretty powerful example to illustrate this point, a family facing an impossible choice. Imagine this. They have to choose one member to sacrifice for the well-being of the rest.
Oh, wow. That's a heavy scenario.
Right. But in that moment of crisis, Pike argues that selfishness melts away. We see the very best of humanity emerge.
Yeah.
Self-sacrifice, unwavering courage, love in the face of unimaginable circumstances.
It's like suddenly in the face of tragedy, these ordinary people discovered this extraordinary strength they never knew they had. It's amazing to me. It's like those stories you hear about people lifting cars to save someone trapped underneath or rushing into burning buildings.
Yeah.
We have this incredible capacity for courage and selflessness that just seems to emerge when it's truly needed.
It's like it was always there, dormant, until those extreme circumstances awaken it.
Exactly. And what I find really empowering about Pike's view is that it's not just about those big heroic moments, He suggests that this potential for good, for strength, it's something we can tap into every single day through the choices we make.
Absolutely. And he takes this idea a step further by suggesting that it's not just about how we act in those moments of crisis, but also about how we choose to see the world on a regular, everyday basis.
Okay, so it's not just about what happens to us, but about how we choose to respond. I like that.
Right. Our perspective is powerful. He uses this compelling comparison between two people looking at the same world, yet having completely different experiences. One might see beauty, opportunities for growth, and connections, while the other sees only hardship, negativity, and isolation.
So true. Two people can be in the exact same situation and have wildly different takeaways.
Exactly. And Pike would argue that this difference boils down to their mindset, their chosen lens for viewing the world.
It's like that old saying, right? Life is what you make it. But Pike seems to be saying that this isn't just some motivational poster quote, it's a powerful call to action.
Absolutely. He wouldn't want us to just passively accept whatever life throws our way. He'd remind us that we have agency. We have the power to choose how we interpret events and, more importantly, how we respond to them. And that choice makes all the difference.
I'm starting to see why you find his work so compelling. It's really about taking ownership of your experience, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And this idea of personal responsibility, it was huge for Pike. But he didn't stop there. He goes on to explore how this all impacts the very fabric of society as a whole.
Okay, now we're getting into the really big picture stuff. I'm all ears.
He makes this fascinating argument, suggesting that there's a fundamental connection between individual morality and the well-being of an entire society. He even goes so far as to use the law of gravity as an analogy.
Okay, hold on, I gotta hear this. How on earth does gravity relate to morality? I'm drawing a blank here.
Yeah.
Just like gravity keeps the planets in orbit, right? Prevents chaos in the universe. Well, Pike says that shared moral principles and values are what hold societies together. They're the glue that allows civilizations to thrive.
So if everyone's running around being dishonest and only looking out for themselves, the whole system kind of falls apart.
That's the idea. He'd say we need things like honesty, compassion, a sense of justice. These shared values act as a sort of social gravity, keeping everything in balance.
Makes sense. And that's probably why he was so concerned about the dangers of corruption, especially within government.
Exactly. When those in positions of power, who are entrusted with upholding those values, when they abuse that power for their own gain, or let things like greed and dishonesty run rampant, Pike saw it as a direct threat to the well-being of everyone.
You know, it's interesting. It's almost like he's saying that a society is only as strong as the individuals within it.
That's a great way to put it. Pike really emphasizes the interconnectedness of it all, you know? We're all part of this larger web, and our actions have ripple effects whether we realize it or not.
It makes you think twice about those little everyday choices, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like maybe being kind to that grumpy cashier or letting someone merge in traffic isn't just about being nice. Maybe it's about contributing to a more positive, more harmonious society overall.
Exactly. It's that butterfly effect in action. And I think that's what makes Pike's work so relevant even today. He's reminding us that we're not just cogs in a machine, you know? We have agency, we have a responsibility to contribute to the world around us, and that even small acts of goodness can make a difference.
It's a powerful message, that's for sure. And honestly, we've barely scratched the surface of Pike's ideas here. I feel like we could spend hours unpacking all of this. But I do want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier because I found it so intriguing. This whole idea of the human mind as the ultimate source of, well, everything.
Yes. That's one of my favorite parts.
Pike really seemed to put a lot of emphasis on the power of the human mind. Can you talk a little more about that? What exactly was he getting at?
Well, for Pike, the human mind, with its incredible capacity for thought, for imagination, for creativity, for connecting with something beyond itself, he saw it as the greatest wonder in the universe.
Wow. He actually uses those words. The greatest wonder in the universe.
He does. And I think in a time when we're increasingly surrounded by technological marvels, it's easy to lose sight of the incredible power we each possess within our own minds.
So it's not just about understanding our place in the universe. It's about actually using our minds, using that incredible power to make the world a better place.
Precisely. And I love how he ties that back to everything else we've been discussing. Our capacity for good, our potential for growth, our ability to impact the world around us. It all stems from this incredible gift we have in our minds. It's like Pike's reminding us that we are the architects of our own experience and, by extension, the architects of the world we want to live in.
What a powerful thought to end on. Albert Pike certainly gave us a lot to contemplate today. A big thank you to you for taking us on this deep dive into his work.
My pleasure. It's always a fascinating journey to delve into these big questions, and Pike certainly doesn't shy away from them.
That's for sure. And for our listeners, if you're feeling inspired to unlock a little more of your own inner architect, be sure to check out our show notes for more on Albert Pike's work and some resources for continuing your own exploration. Until next time.